And we are back on the Dare to Dream podcast, episode 121. And where are we, my friend?
We are in Osaka, Japan.
Osaka, Japan.
We are reunited. I am here visiting Vinny for 2 weeks. And boy, oh boy, is it good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. We're very close right now. Come to think of it, but it's great. We are close anyway. But yeah, so you're here 2 weeks. You've been there already a couple of days. Why don't you let the people know how it's been so far?
It has been a wild couple of days. The most sushi I think I've ever eaten. We're plugging bowls of ramen left and right. And it has been a dream. It's been so much fun being back here after coming in 2019, coming back. You have a lay of the land. Your Japanese is flawless. You're fully fluent.
And it took about a few days just to really master the language and the craft. But yeah, it's been epic so far. It's been a fun little weekend, and then today we were heading out to Fukuoka, which is down in Kyushu. So it's the four main islands of Japan. It's Honshu, which is like the main island. It's got Tokyo, Osaka, pretty much spans the whole spectrum. Hokkaido up in the north, the Great White North. Kyushu is the kind of tropical island in the south. You got Nagasaki, which we're going to after Fukuoka. And you got Shikoku, which is kind of the Jurassic Park-like island. It's very rural and it's very interesting. We went back in 2019. You didn't make that part, but we stayed in a log cabin with Shino-san on the island of Shikoku. But now we're going to... I've not been to Kyushu, so me and Morgan. So this is part 2 of the friends joined Vinny in his apartment and recorded a podcast. And so Morgan was here over the winter. Shout out Mo. Sure you're listening to this. And moved to Hokkaido up in the north. Some snowboarding. Now you're coming. It's May 1st.
May 1st. Wow.
It's perfect weather. It's a nice sunny day here in Osaka. 11:30. And we're going to hop on the bullet train this afternoon. Take about 3.5 hours south to Kyushu. So it's kind of the more tropical vibes, just good weather. Fukuoka is known for food. It's pretty much like a food, very fun city, food and drink, and it's going to be epic.
It's the ramen capital of Japan, isn't it?
Ramen capital of Japan.
Great.
Yes. And then Nagasaki, obviously a very historic city. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, where bombed, atom bomb, World War II. And it's a very international city now. So, harbor city. And lots of just like European influence from back in, the Edo period, 1600s, Second Shogun, my favorite book that you inspired me to read originally. Nagasaki is like just opening up to the world as like the ports where, the Dutch, the Portuguese were trying to come in and pretty much open Japan to religion. I think first, foremost, Catholicism, Christianity, but also just trade. So it's fascinating. People said they love it, so I'm very excited.
All right. Well, we're going to get into some lessons. We're not just going to hit you with Japanese history.
Which I'd love to do.
One thing I want to talk about today is, first of all, it's surreal being here with you. We've been doing long distance for 8 months. Can't believe that we're actually together. And what is really striking is how it feels like there's no time passed between us. The moment I saw you when I got to the hostel,
it was like we're on a speed dating app, just like staring at each other's eyes.
This is it.
Open up a little bit.
You're not doing well. There's not going to be another date.
Yeah.
But being in Japan for the second time and being on this trip, it's so easy to get focused on the future. We've caught ourselves talking about our next meal while we're eating our current meal. For us, it's just about the food.
Yes.
Eating our way through Japan.
Big part of it.
Sushi, ramen, all the things. But being present is this thing that everyone talks about. It's really hard to do.
It's hard to do.
It is hard to do. And recently, I've been reading some essays from Alan Watts. He has a collection of essays. The book is called The Art of Insecurity. And he has this one essay where he talks about being present, and I just want to read a quote from it because it really struck me, and I've been thinking about it a lot on this trip.
Please.
This is from the essay called Pain and Time. What is the use of planning to be able to eat next week unless I can really enjoy the meals when they come? If I am so busy planning how to eat next week that I cannot fully enjoy what I am eating now, I will be in the same predicament when next week's meals become now. And I love this because if you can't enjoy the present moment and you're thinking about the future, when you get to the future, you won't be able to enjoy that present moment. So it's this practice of focusing on the here and now, what you're doing, instead of thinking about either the future or the past.
Yes, and honestly, like, it's, like I said, it's not easy, but it's like, even when, we've been waiting for this trip for months, we haven't seen each other in 8 months.
And dreading it for months.
Dreading it. What am I going to do with this guy? He's going to come here for a couple of weeks, but it's like, even though it's like so much excitement for it, I mean, you get here, and we still have the same, problems that everybody has.
I don't have any problems.
Of like, I'm thinking about, work crossed my mind or something. I'm sure it's happened with you. And it takes you out of the moment of like, wow, I can't believe Greg is here right now. We're in Japan. We remind each other of that. We're like, dude, can't believe you're here right now. This is wild. But it's like, of course, there are moments when it also just seems like it's everyday life again. It's like we're just hanging and thinking about other things. And I guess that's part of it, but you think about, when you actually consciously think about it, and it's like, what is actually taking place right now? Like, how lucky am I to be in Japan, a best friend? And this is something that I remind myself of often when I get caught in the trifles of everyday life, of like, even though I'm here and doing this amazing thing, it's still not always easy. And I have to remind myself, like, this was your dream, and, it doesn't have to be perfect. Obviously it won't be. But to enjoy it, even if things aren't going great in the moment, like, because you will look back and regret not just savoring those moments that you had. Because there'll always be something.
Yeah, and I mentioned that being present is a practice, something that you have to work at. And a way I've found to be more present and to also almost expand time, or at least my perception of time, is to constantly just keep checking in with myself, reminding myself of, oh my gosh, you're in Japan. I'm halfway across the world right now, recording this podcast with you in your little dojo. There's so many times throughout the trip, whether it's at Family Mart and I'm getting an onigiri, which is this rice ball wrapped in seaweed filled with fish or roe, just to check in constantly and be like, wow, this is actually happening. And then to think about all of the things that have happened that day. Mm-hmm. Almost like a mental journaling as you go.
That's true.
It really helps me be present. And then when I get to the end of the day, it seems like my day has been longer. It's like the more times I can check in throughout the day in the present moment and just really sit with it, it expands my perception of time.
Interesting. Same with meditation too. It's like, meditation is not just trying to clear your mind of all thoughts. It's just, even your mind will inevitably run. It's always bringing it back to, I mean, there's different, philosophies about what meditation is. Is it even like, some people like to focus on the breath and like keep bringing it back to that. Some people just let the mind just completely run if it wants to, but then bring it back, like it's a dog in a park and it roams free and kind of just gotta keep bringing it home, and then I run off a bit. But
is the mind off leash or on leash?
That's a good question.
And some people like to do chi generation. So
that's true.
We've been doing this chi generation exercise that is quite hilarious. It's about 15 minutes and it's a form of qigong, and we look pretty ridiculous when we're doing it. We're standing there with our arms out like this, and then at one point you have your arms above your head.
At one point for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Arms above your head.
So that's been fun.
Generating energy. But yeah, it is just a reminder that, like, no matter what we're going through, even when this is what the chi is about. It's even in those uncomfortable times, reminding yourself, like, I got this, I could get through this. And how can you even enjoy that challenging or uncomfortable experience? So even when it's not, things aren't going perfectly, how could you bring the dog home to just be like, at least I'm doing anything at all? Like, what, I might be doing something that's uncomfortable or strange or interesting or amazing. And if it is amazing, that's also a reason to bring your mind back to it. Be like, how grateful am I to be doing this right now?
At least you have a dog.
At least you have a dog.
At least you have a mind.
It's free to roam.
Right. So good. So what was I want to talk about the being different.
Yeah. So please do.
You start us off.
So I read Big Magic recently. You did as well. And that book was all about creating for creating's sake. Creating this thing called Big Magic. It's not really, I mean, this has helped me a lot with like writing and content creation stuff. And I read a scrolling on Instagram, and which shows you that's not all bad, because I came across this letter from I think it was like 2004 or something, and somehow we bring this all together, but this like English teacher makes her students email a famous author and ask for advice, I think. And nobody got a reply except Kurt Vonnegut replies. And he's like, oh man, you really know how to like, put a smile on an old man's face. He's probably like 85. And he pretty much says, no matter what, like, live the most like outrageous and creative life you can for no reason, like not to make money, not to do anything, but purely for the reason of making, in this other context, big magic, which is purely because it enriches your life. So he's like, I want each one of you students to like, go home and write a poem tonight, challenge yourself, make sure it rhymes, and then when you're done with it, rip it up in tiny pieces and like burn it. Don't show your teacher, don't show anybody else, but you will have enriched your own life just by putting those thoughts on the page. And what it does is, maybe you'll never be successful, maybe I'll never make money, big money from writing or anything, but you learn about who you are. Through writing that poem, you unlock those parts inside of you that wow, I just learned a little more about myself. And that is the reason to pursue anything creative, anything interesting. It's the reason I'm in Japan. So he says, dance down the street, write poetry, do all these things that make life just more interesting, not for some end goal, but because the end in itself is learning about who you really are and, illuminating these parts of you that live inside of you and are weighed down by expectations and things and are afraid to shine, but through being, this comes around to just being like unapologetically yourself. By actively doing those things, you learn about who you are. And that's perhaps less of a formist or more of an interesting person than I think we all give ourselves credit for.
Oh
boy.
That is the timer for our laundry. We'll be getting in a moment. So I love that. We've talked about this before, but the reason you're doing the thing is for yourself. And in doing the thing, that's enough. You don't do it for anyone else, for any external goal or gain. But I wanted to hear more about the Dante quote. At the heart of the...
Got it. Well, that's great. Well, I'm glad I talked about Vonnegut because that was exciting. So this is all about, I watched an epic interview last week on Lex Friedman's podcast, who I recently discovered, and it's like my main interest right now. It's Lex Friedman makes robots. He's a researcher and not physicist, but researcher engineer at MIT, and he's just like the coolest guy. Just biggest heart. Has literally anybody. He can get anybody in the world on his podcast. It's like one of the biggest podcasts in the world, all about technology, artificial intelligence, space travel, like really anything he's interested in and wants to know about. Politics. Kanye West on the show after his whole, anti-Semitic foray, all that stuff. But so he had last week this interview with Max Tegmark, who is also a researcher and physicist at MIT, and he's talking about we are seriously at like a precipice for artificial intelligence, and he's put out this open letter. It's been signed by Yuval Noah Harari, Elon Musk, like all these huge people, to halt the development of artificial intelligence for 6 months. And that's kind of a different topic, but during the podcast, he talks about how his family truly like they were their own people and did things like their way. They just didn't, didn't do what everybody else did, and they really, even despite everybody doubting them, and they're very courageous and did their own thing. And one time, Max Tegmark, like early in his career, just did this kind of outlandish thing, made a claim that was against the norm, and got like a reply from like a big name in the industry, like, this is gonna ruin your career, like you should never put this out, like what are you thinking, something like that. And he sent that to his dad. His dad replies with a quote from Dante: "Segui il tuo corso e lascia gente." Follow your own road and let people talk. And I teared up like watching that interview, and that's like all his dad replied: just follow your own road and let people talk. And I mean, that's what the show's all about. That's what everything we're doing. It really makes no difference what people are saying, what the norm is. You got to do these things to pursue your own interests for that big magic, to understand who you really are.
And that's ultimately how you find happiness, fulfillment, meaning, purpose, and how you don't end up at the end of your life sharing the number one regret of the dying, which is living a life based on other people's expectations. Mm-hmm. So walking your own path just because you feel like it, because you want to, not worrying about what other people think. I think that's so great. And then I read an article this morning called The Age of Average. It's talking about how everything from our buildings, our interior design, coffee shops, books, movies, something called the Instagram face, which is this feminine aesthetic. You're looking at it, this feminine aesthetic. Everything over the last 50 to 100 years has been converging on the same look, the same aesthetic, the same design. And it's kind of depressing. And at the same time, it's also an invitation to, like you said, be unapologetically yourself. And in leaning into your creativity, your uniqueness, you can stand out from this age of average. Mm-hmm. That's what Seth Godin talks about. It's what a lot of the writers and creators and authors that we look up to talk about, is that the only true way to have a competitive advantage in this modern era is to be yourself and to fully lean into that and to leverage your idiosyncrasies and your uniqueness to be fully you and not anyone else.
Dude, so pretty cool story. So last week I was working as a sub at this like kind of random, so it seems like, I'm sent to these schools like 2 days a week. I'm a sub, and I'm sent to what seem like little random pockets of like the Osaka area. Like, it's an hour away, and it's always like a rainy day when I get there, so it's like kind of depressing, but like also really interesting. And it's just like, it seems like a, just a not a railroad town, but like just a post like out there in the boonies a little bit. Then I'll go back on like a beautiful sunny day, and like everyone's out and it's much more inviting. But like on those first days, I'm like, where am I? And I have those moments of like, what am I doing out here? But then like I'll have a lesson with like a one-on-one person, and it'll just like, oh, wow, can't believe I'm out here an hour outside of Osaka, like in this little school, and I just like spoke to this Japanese person for 40 minutes that I would never speak to for any other reason, really. And last week I had a lesson with this high school kid who I got like word that like he doesn't like to use the books. He just likes to have a free-flowing conversation. Like, don't correct him too much, just like let him do his thing. Okay, sounds good. And so he's interested in like history and stuff. Like, that's gonna be great. And we start talking about like AI and pretty much like all this stuff. And he's talking about how like stressed he is, just feeling the pressure he's like, for the acceptance test into universities. It's like you just take a test, and it's just like a lot of stress and just studying a ton. And his family is like doctors, and he's thinking about what he wants to get into. And he's telling me how he's interested in immunology, and that's like what he's thinking about doing, like being a researcher in immunology. And then he's like, but there's not much money in it. Like, you can't get paid much if my research doesn't like pan out or something. And then also I could be like a clinical, doctor, which I'm not like as interested in, but like better pay and like, well, let me tell you about it.
You came to the right place.
Yeah. As someone with a lot of experience now, but someone with very little experience, but, from my perspective of like, I told him that it could be worth looking into, like, if you're seriously interested in immunology, you go down that road, you have no idea what avenues will expand from actually following your innate curiosity instead of doing something from the get-go that will make more money, but perhaps there's a roof to how much money you'll make and also just how much like interest you'll find in it if you aren't interested in it at the get-go. Like, I don't know, it's my perspective obviously, but like I just said that it could be, you just never know what's going to happen. If you follow that interest, you don't know what doors will open. If you are excited about the thing that you're doing, if money doesn't matter as much because you actually enjoy the thing. Like, there's so many stories of doctors and lawyers and things who they do it for the money. Obviously, there's a lot of money to be made, but the more money you make anyway, the higher your cost of living increases. So like, you get stuck in this like same. You're not really making any more. Even though you're making more money, you're spending more.
Your standard of living.
Your standard of living increases every step of the way.
It's the old hedonic adaptation.
There it is. So like, yeah, think about doing the immunology if that's where your interests actually lie. But thoughts on that?
I love that. I mean, that is the mission that I'm currently embarking on, is to have 100 dream sessions with 100 different people. So a dream session is an hour-long conversation where I give someone the gift of listening to them talk about their biggest dream for an hour. And I'm asking questions. I'll put my coaching hat on if something comes up that's getting in the way that we need to work through. But it's really just to give people the platform, the opportunity, someone to listen to them talk about their biggest dreams, because we all have dreams, or we all had dreams. A lot of us had our dreams on the table and then took them off because at some point in our life someone said, oh, that's unrealistic. People like us don't do that kind of thing. So
Uncle Jim
or Uncle Tom or Uncle Gary, the uncles. And one person who you're worried about judging you, or you're going to live your whole life in fear because of that. But anyways, I love it. You gave that man a dream session. Just giving someone the space and the time to talk about their dream and to affirm it, to ask questions, to be interested. Mm-hmm. It's such a gift, and that's what I'm up to. We'll take it back from Japan probably till the end of June, trying to have 100 conversations, 100 hours of talking about people's dreams. So if you're listening to this and you want to have your own dream session, go to my website and click on book a discovery session. Need to update that to say book a dream session. And we'll talk about your biggest dream, and it will be a blast. The only rule is that we have to be unrealistic.
I like it. Can I sign up?
You can sign up, but you don't have big dreams, dude. Don't think it's going to happen.
I'm not going to accept the application.
We're going to deny that one. So I think we're going to wrap things up. I have this visual that an old Japanese man is going to beat me with a cane because my laundry has been in the dryer for too long.
Yeah, one last thing is like, as human beings, so I was on this hike last week, and I went to the 2 hours south of Osaka, Wakayama Prefecture, and it's called Koyasan. It's this mountaintop Buddhist complex. 1,200 years ago, this priest named Kukai hiked this mountaintop, and he established Shingon Buddhism on this mountain. So he went to China, learned about Buddhism, brought it back, and created this kind of new sect called Shingon Buddhism, which I don't know the specifics really, because it seems pretty, complex, but very cool. And there's a pilgrimage route to get up there. So the full route is 7 hours, and you hike to Koyasan. You get there, you cross the Diamond Gates, and you go. It's crazy. And you could stay overnight in the Buddhist monasteries, and I do want to do in the future, but I wanted to do a day trip. So I did like a 3-hour shortened version of the route. And the whole time I'm just like, they have these awesome like stone pillars lining the whole pilgrimage path called Choishi pillars, just like stone, and they replaced the 1,200-year-old ones that Kukai placed. And I'm just like, what was it really like 1,200 years ago? Like, this guy's cruising this path, he's in this forest. I mean, the world has seen fires and rain and earthquakes and who knows what, but like, how much different was it really? How much different was this guy Kukai? Like, we haven't changed that much as human beings. And that's what this Dante quote inspired me, is we've always been looking and asking the same questions, really. Who am I? What is my purpose here on earth? And we've learned about different things. We've learned about, the universe and different planets, and religion is changed and everything, but the same premise of like, why are we here remains. And Kukai was looking for it. What am I doing here? And it was all, it's all feeding into the same questions. Dante was asking it. So this just inspired me of like, it's just mind blowing to actually think of what these people were like. But we've always been a human asking the same questions. And if you are, of course you are. We are all doing it. But if you're wondering, if you're questioning it, just take some solace in that fact that we have always been asking these questions. And everybody is on this earth to find out, really explore why they're here, and to ask those ancient questions and really pursue that. And you don't want to look back at the end of your life and say, I never really gave myself those genuine interests and never gave it everything I had. Take fact, take solace, take inspiration from Dante, walk your own path, and let people talk. Let them say what they're going to say. Do you.
And take the pressure off. Alan Watts is a big proponent of letting those big questions remain unanswered. People put so much pressure on themselves to find their purpose, to find meaning in life. And certain people like Alan Watts say the meaning of life is so simple and so obvious. It's just to be alive. So ask the big questions, but don't beat yourself up too much if they aren't coming to you immediately.
They're not gonna, like, it's pretty much, it comes back to just explore your interests. Like, what is that force that is calling you to just live a little bit more interesting of a life, a little bit more in tune to your natural inclinations of what you want to do, and enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride.
Cheers, y'all. We're going to Fukuoka. See you on the other side.